Hello and welcome to the West Ham Breakdown with me, Jack Alderton, and my mate Callum Goodall in a week where West Ham got battered 4-1 by Spurs. I'm feeling miserable coming into this one. So we've talked at length, Cal, haven't we, about how to get through all of the points that we need to get through today without being too grumpy as we go through the pod. But yeah, just how grumpy are you feeling at the moment about football?
Yeah, you know what? I think I'm just about over it. I've just tried to not let it affect me too much because I knew that I was going to have to talk about it at length today. So I'll probably feel worse after this, to be honest, because I'm digging up old wounds, so to speak. But yeah, yeah, it's certainly presented us with a difficult task, hasn't it? Because we always try and be as positive as we can, but I think objectivity has to be the aim today because trying to spin a 4-1 loss to your local rivals is never going to look, and there's plenty for us to get stuck into. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I think we have to be. I think we have to be honest. The best place to start that excruciating process of honestly unraveling what's happened here is to be honest about how good Spurs were in points of
Yes.
this game. So I think they made the absolute right decision to bring Yves Bissouma back into the midfield, Bentancur out. I think that improved the balance of their midfield tenfold. I think they then worked out even better balance in the second half with Pat Matassar coming on to replace James Maddison. I think Son being back in the team, huge difference, huge positive difference to Spurs. His ability to take chances as opposed to Timo Werner's ability to miss them makes a big difference to what they can do, particularly in transitional moments. And any conversation we have about this game has to be in some way coloured by the fact that Dejan Kulusevski is currently playing like a man possessed, like one of the
best in the Prem
offensive
midfield at the
midfielders
minute.
in the world.
Yeah,
He has a sensational combination of abilities to play that role. Dovetails magnificently with the other Spurs players on the right hand side, Porro and Johnson, and offers so much at the moment, so much more than really you'd imagine Kulusevski ever offering. It becomes a bit wild that he ended up marooned out on the wing for so long because this guy is obviously a fantastic number 10 or advanced number 8, and we saw that really. We were the victims of that in just the same way that Manchester United were a few weeks ago. So I think that's the starting point. Spurs, particularly in transitional moments, were outstanding and made use of those moments really, really, really well. We were pretty weird in some ways because we're going to talk about a game of two halves from our side of things and two completely different tactical approaches. So I think we have to deal with each in their own context. And we'll start with the first half where Cal, I mean, this is very reductive, but it looked like a poor man's impression of David Moyes away from home against the top 6 team.
yeah, yeah, and in parts didn't look horrific. I'll say that in an effort to try and take some positivity out of it. I think we kept them at bay. We were under the cosh for most of the half. I think the stat about the corners has been slapped around everywhere. But to concede that many corners in 45 minutes of football speaks to the amount of pressure we were under. But I didn't necessarily feel threatened for all of that, if that makes sense. I think we were ceding possession and we were willing to let them take shots, but a lot of them didn't feel as though it felt as though that was on our terms. We were like, yeah, we'll let you have those shots. That's all good. It was part of the plan. What I didn't like was the fact that we dropped so deep that you had moments where Lucas Paquetá was playing left-sided centre-back, and you had moments where Antonio was playing left wing-back, and you had moments where Jared Bowen was playing right wing-back. And I think that's where your point about the David Moyes system, but done poorly, comes in, because Moyes would have adopted a similar approach. The backs to the wall, hit him on the break. But at least the players would have been in the right positions. Because not only is it you're stitching up your players in terms of an out of possession approach, because you've got Jared Bowen have to backpedal against Son dribbling at him, which is just not a situation that you want your best winger to be in when you've got the player behind him, which is Wan-Bissaka, who could be doing a fairly stand-up job of defending in a 1v1 situation against Tottenham's most dangerous player. But the system dictates that no, that's not the scenario you're in. But also, when you do get the ball and you do have a turnover, your transition's screwed because your wingers are so far back that there's no outlet apart from Antonio. And again, he was at left wing-back for some points of the game. And also, Paqueta's camped in your box, and naturally, when you spark those transitions, 9 times out of 10, it's because we've headed the ball out of the box, and it's whoever's feet it lands at on the edge of the box that needs to spark the counter. But Paqueta's so far back that he's not even near the ball. So, yeah, it was just a strange system that, actually managed to take us to the half in reasonable shape, but it certainly felt like maybe we dodged a few bullets as well. It didn't. It's not a system that necessarily should have worked on paper, but it did the job.
I suppose what we have to say there is that the individual and collective execution of said system was actually really good. So, players like Bowen forced into right wing back and having to defend against Son. Did he do a good job? Absolutely, he did. He did really, really well. Paqueta dropping into the box, becoming an extra centre back for long periods of the half, actually. There's a situation where the ball does go over into Brennan Johnson. Emerson's fallen asleep and Paqueta needs to cover it, and he does head it out. He doesn't manage to get. I mean, he realises very late. He's a lucky boy that he realised.
Where the two of them close in on him. Yeah.
Well, no, they had 2 moments. They had one where they closed in on him and Emerson managed to head it out for a corner, and another where Paqueta just managed to get in front and head it out the other side of the goal, also for a corner. Both of those players did very well. Kudus carrying, both wingers actually, Kudus and Bowen, in the situations that they found themselves in so deep, having to drive forward with the ball from within our own box or from the edge of our own box. Were they able to do that? Were they able to get us forward effectively and create opportunities at the other end? Yes, they were. Bowen's cutbacks as well, 2 high quality moments in the final third. So the execution of the system was quite positive and done quite well, really, by the vast majority of the team in the first half. The question marks come over, really, why do you put players in such difficult situations? Why would you ask Paqueta to do a job that is so clearly not suited to his abilities? Why would you remove Jarrod Bowen from situations where he can be so much more dangerous for us on the break and put him so deep that he can't impact the game in transitional moments? Where did he get all of his goals? Spurs are a team that defend with just 2 on the last line. You want to have Bowen running into the space in behind, because that's where he scores. That's where he's got all his goals previously. Massively. Exactly.
I think there was one moment, as well, which I think I said earlier about your only outlet being Antonio, but there was one moment I remember where Antonio ended up having to dribble from his own box as well. He jumped over 2 players, actually did really well to knock the ball,
drew a foul
hurdled
from Udogie,
tackle, and then draw the foul, and allowed us to push a little bit further up because we reset, get the break. But the ceiling is so low when your best transitional players are so far back, because you're asking, the difficulty level of the challenge that they've got to take on when they receive the ball is just so much higher because they've got so much further to cover. And then that's not even taking into account the fact that, as you say, the biggest vulnerability of Spurs is the fact that they leave themselves so vulnerable at the back, and you should be looking to exploit that, and the setup did not look to really do that at all, and really it should, because that's probably the biggest strength of ours at the minute, is that we do still look dangerous when we are in transition.
Precisely. I mean, if you're going to set up to play in such a low block, frankly, then you want to be exploiting the space that you're naturally creating in behind from the way in which you defend. Otherwise, exactly, you're just putting yourself under pressure for huge long periods for what real reason. Difficult to really say what the reason was for it. In fact, the positive moments that we generated going forward didn't just come in transition. Some of them came from actually a slower, deeper build-up. I think our goal comes really from us working the ball out from the back initially and moving the ball forwards, and Bowen able to get that cut back through to Kudus. So I think the first half is strange, really. In summary, we did well, we coped well in the circumstances we found ourselves in. It wasn't ideal. I think everyone probably would have gone in at halftime, players and coaches, knowing that's not quite right. We need to do something to adjust that, because the longer this goes, the more hairy those moments are going to become, the more situations where they're going to target the fact that Paquetá is finding himself as a left-sided centre-back, the more moments there were actually later in the second half, and this is something we'll come on to later in the podcast, where they were getting in behind Kudus repeatedly with Porro. Bowen did a great job of defending, to steal some Dyche terminology, south side of Udogie, always being goal side of Udogie. Conversely, on the other side, Kudus often caught ahead of Porro and allowing the passes in behind, which put us under more and more pressure down that side of the pitch. So Spurs were definitely finding solutions as the first half went on and able to exert more pressure, generate better chances. Second half, well, it was a completely different team, wasn't it? Completely different, whole different approach. We went out and we pressed. And 2 high recoveries in the entire first 45 minutes became 3 in the first, 5-6 minutes of the second half. We were completely different. PPDA falls through the floor. PPDA being the amount of passes the opposition can complete before a defensive intervention. So, suddenly looking to be really aggressive where we can, to win high turnovers, to possess the ball high up the pitch. You see Guido Rodriguez moving the ball around quite nicely. Some nice switches from Souček. Hey, we got the ball in Spurs' half. There's a few decent openings. We managed to work some good moments. Doesn't quite come off for us. And then Spurs scored what I think was probably their best goal.
Yeah.
Really lovely pass from Son.
Team goal, definitely. I think Kulusevski's goal was good skill, but in terms of what Postecoglou would have been most happy with, it would have been that goal in terms of how it was created.
Fantastic awareness and cutback from Udogie. Good timing of the run from Bissouma. Can we do things better here? Absolutely. This is the one moment where we get caught deep in the way that we were in the first half. We didn't jump out to press. Do I think a lot of that is created by the fact that we start the whole sequence with Bowen down, defending with 10. He gets up. He's trying to do the right thing by getting up and not getting treatment. Would it have helped us if he'd stayed down and got treatment? Absolutely, yes. It's more useful to have 11 players to set to defend the next attack rather than having Bowen standing up but not really moving because he's hobbling 35 yards into Spurs' half, and then they're able to come on to us and attack whilst we're a man short. Whole situation starts like that. We're caught deep. We don't jump out from the corner that follows that sequence, and they're able to score off the back of it. Antonio and Paquetá are both late to realise the danger with Bissouma, and it's a goal that doesn't look good from our perspective, but it's definitely the goal that involved the sort of most quality as a team move from Spurs' perspective. Didn't even mention like Wan-Bissaka's caught wrong, so I'm not really sure what he's doing. He allows Udogie, it's a very strange bit of defending from Wan-Bissaka, just allows Udogie in behind him, checks it twice as if someone's just going to magically appear to mark Udogie. Obviously that doesn't happen. So we concede, but I think we have to contextualize that and say we probably concede. When we do concede the goal, it probably comes in our best 5-10 minutes of the entire match to that point. And the reaction actually initially to Spurs' second goal is quite positive. We do really well to resettle again and get back up into their half, to possess the ball. We win a corner. A lot of what we were doing was really good at the time, and it brings me on to really what's going to be a key question for this episode. Why then, after the goal goes in, the Bissouma goal, do we pan to the touchline and we see Carlos Soler, Edson Alvarez and Crescencio Somerville all preparing to come on straight after the goal goes in? Possibly 3 of the strangest, or the strangest triple substitution I've seen us do this season. And you ask yourself a myriad of questions, and the most important one, I think, is one that Darcy, who will be joining us on Extra Time, which is sort of the second half of this podcast when we continue over on Patreon. First 7 days free, please join us over there. We'd love to have you. Cheeky plug, had to get it in there. But he said, what marker was there for these players to say that if you don't achieve this, if you don't do this, I'm going to make changes? Because the only possible one you can really see is don't concede a goal. And that seems an incredibly reductive way to look at what was actually generally quite a good moment in the match for us.
Yeah, and it's completely hypothetical, but I can only assume that the halftime team talk would have been in possession, more of the same. We've been decent. We've created chances in the way that I want to create them. There were 2 cutbacks made in wide areas through combinative play between Bowen and Wan-Bissaka that found Kudus at the back post. We score from one of them. We don't score from another. But that is exactly how Lopetegui wants to be creating chances. And it works well. And both come after a nice spell of possession where it found itself, I think the goal finds itself in the wing first. We don't take the overlap the first time. We play it back into defence. We test out the left side and we play it back out round to the right again. And then we play for the cutback. That's brilliant. That's such good possession. So that's gone really well. Out of possession, dubious for all the reasons we said earlier. Players out of position, too passive. Second half starts. We continue creating chances in the same way, but with a more front-footed, aggressive approach that's way less passive and a lot less deep. So to me, I'm like, okay, at half-time, he's clearly gone in and said, be more aggressive out of possession. Good, that's what we want. Continue in possession. We've done that. So, I was on the same page as you. I was like, this is an improved... From where we've left off in the first half, we've continued to do the things we were doing well, and we've improved on the things that weren't going well. Yes, we've conceded an unfortunate goal that's really well worked by Tottenham, but your plan that you've presumably laid out at half-time is working. So for them to just, like you say, on the drop of a hat or on the conceding of a goal, to just ignore the whole evidence base of the 10 minutes prior and just go, nah, actually, bun this, it wasn't working. I've not just seen what I've just seen. Let's get 3-man off. A, really confusing, but B, like, for the players, what message does that send out? A, what level of performance do I need to actually put in to be able to stay on the pitch? I'm very confused. B, do I have any confidence in what I'm being told to do by the manager anyway if he's doubting himself 7 minutes after the halftime team talk that he's just given me and we've delivered on? Like, just a real bizarre scenario, I have to say. And that's not even factoring in the actual people coming on anyway and the issues that he's trying to address by replacing them. I think that's an entirely separate issue in terms of if you accept that the subs are being made, what is it that he's actually trying to improve on?
Yeah, it's a real head scratcher.
It really is.
I've done a long review today. We spoke about it over the weekend, and I still can't really get my head around how this became the decision. Because, like I say, it's not just about how he played in those first 6 minutes of the second half, which genuinely I think were probably our best 6 minutes or at least the first 5 minutes up until the moment where we defend the corner and don't jump out and we concede a goal. Apart from that, we've done a really, really good job. To put in sort of more in concrete in terms of, when he says, let's press a little bit more aggressively, that just looks like instead of the striker dropping onto the 6 for Spurs and leaving the 2 centre-backs free, you just go from the 6, you leave the 6 to one of the midfielders, one of the midfielders steps up, and then you can have this whole way more aggressive approach to trying to win the ball back high. Yeah, and if that's the messaging, I can't really see how the players didn't deliver on that in those 10 minutes. There are a couple of things that don't go our way as well, I think is what are worth mentioning. Souček in the build-up to what then becomes the Spurs' third, does a really good job of forcing a high turnover. Bowen, that's actually Spurs' second. Bowen gets on it, and the foul's given the other way, and that's what creates the injury for Bowen. He's tackled by a doggy, goes down, and that creates the whole sequence of events that leads to the second. And then again later, Souček from kickoff is booked despite being fouled by Brennan Johnson, who's blocking him off. And that kind of leads to this sort of unraveling feeling.
A snowball effect, yeah.
Which is not really, and I have to say that it's not really, I've watched this, trust me, I've watched this 10 minutes about 12 times.
You don't want to know how many times Jack watches this shit.
It's not really being contributed to by our players doing things that are really bad on the pitch. It's just kind of, they've scored a good goal. We've lost out on a couple of 50-50 calls with the ref. And then it's like, well, no, it's all up in the air. We're going to make 3 changes and completely change things all over again. And I think that's just really hard for the players on the pitch. I think it becomes really hard to kind of understand what you're doing and why you're doing it if it changes in this way. And it comes sort of not as an isolated incident. We've had loads of second half substitutions. We've had first half substitutions where Guido got hooked against Chelsea. We've had ideas that have lasted all of 5-6 minutes on the pitch before, changes of system, changes of shape, changes of approach. I think it must just be really hard to keep up sometimes if you're out there on the pitch, first halves dig in and defend. You do that to the best of your ability. And like we said, the execution of the players, we have issues with where some of those players end up because of the tactical blueprint for the game. But the execution of the players there isn't really too much wrong with that. They come out for the second half, the blueprint is different, but again, the execution, there's not too much wrong with it. And then you have 3 players being subbed off, and they must think, well, there's 2 different plans. We've done our best job at both of those different plans. So what do you want? What is it that you're actually after here?
Yeah, I think it must be incredibly difficult, and I think the only point I'd add on that is to the confusion for the players is, I suppose it depends how much you think they listen to the sort of what Lopetegui's saying in the press and stuff. But if we assume that what he's telling us in the press is the same as what he's telling the players, is that to get out of this we need consistency. If your manager is, the only consistency is that he's consistently changing his mind and changing players and personnel, it must be really disheartening, confusing, whatever adjective you want to chuck in there. Like for the players, it must be really hard to buy in or to see a light at the end of the tunnel if you're not being presented with a solution as such. You're being presented with several different solutions, and when the results don't come with the changes, it's really hard to believe in the changes that are being made. So I think you become kind of disillusioned, but also probably uber critical of yourself as well, because it's that, we've all been there, not in football, but like you think you've done a good job and you get the feedback that you don't want, and it's like, how do I don't understand what I'm doing wrong, like it's not constructive, or you start to beat yourself up, and that's no way to be going into a football match, especially not with the situation we find ourselves in so far, on the back of a period at West Ham that had actually been so successful for us in terms of our history and stuff. So I feel for the players, I really do, because I think, as you say, the blueprint is really not the best at the minute, but it's no fault of their own. They're going out there and executing it to the best of their abilities, but just not seeing the rewards.
Yeah, a couple of things we need to talk about very quickly before we go to a break. And the first is, the goals that then follow that really, for me, come from systemic issues that we just know we've been speaking about. The rest defence is too light. There's too much space. I think it's the fourth goal where it's just wide. It is the fourth goal. A huge gaping space on our right hand side, on the left side for Spurs. We're not set up in any kind of sensible rest defence shape. Bowen takes a risk trying to dribble 2 players in the middle of the pitch with both fullbacks committed. It's just a bit of a mess in terms of how you organise your team when you have the ball.
In the interest of taking some positive gleanings from it, I saw a lot of people saying that Todibo was like a giraffe on skates. I think Todibo did as good a job as he could have done in that scenario, right? He shows Son out to his weak foot. He shows him out wide. He jockeys him. He matches him for pace the whole way. He shows him. He reduces the shooting angle to only the near post. There's only one space that he can aim for because he's forced him so wide. And unfortunately, a combination of less than ideal goalkeeping and very, very good finishing from Son, who we know is an excellent finisher, is our undoing. But I just wanted to come to the defence of Todibo there, because I think he's been stitched up a bit by the system and he's defended the scenario. And I don't think he did anything wrong, and I don't think he could have really done anything better.
Well, he's defending central centre-back, right centre-back and right-back by himself against Son, right? So it's difficult, and I agree he does a good job. And I think you have a similar combination of good finishing and bad goalkeeping for the first goal, where I think actually a sort of recovery defending, we did everything right to force Kulusevski to take the shot from distance. We close all the options to play in behind, to any of the options in behind. I think it's Mathiasen that's racing forward with the ball. There's no option to play any of the players that are running behind. With 3v3 on the back line, they recover. Guido manages to get back in alongside them, or I think it's Wan-Bissaka actually is the player that manages to get back in very late, and then Kulusevski has to chop and take a shot from range, and again Areola should really save it. It's at the near post.
I saw a lot of people in that saying as well, you can't let Kulusevski cut in onto his left, but unless Guido was unless his legs were twice as long, I'm not really sure he's even capable of. At that point, when Kulusevski's on the ball, I don't think anyone could get out quick enough to prevent that option. You've done the right thing by pinning him that far back. I think to expect to then also be able to cut off the Jenkins side is unfair. It's not possible.
Forced. I think in both situations, forced the least dangerous shooting angle that we possibly could have. Yeah. And that's the problem. It's the system. No, like this is the thing. We're talking about 2 goals that are not great when you look at them. And we're saying the players have probably done the best work they could have done to limit the quality of the chance. And yet you're looking at the chances at the end of the day and you're saying these are really good chances, which is there's something wrong if that's the conclusion you're arriving at. Last thing we have to cover very, very, very quickly is Mavropanos is another player that comes on. He comes on not that long after the first set of changes we're talking about. I have no idea what that's all about at all. We're trying to press. I think instruction has clearly come at half time to step out and be more aggressive. The consequences are then felt naturally. We're much more aggressive. We're much higher up the pitch. Spurs start killing us in transitional moments with their pace on the break, exploiting the spaces that we've been leaving, frankly, all season that other teams have been taking advantage of as well. And then Guido Rodriguez, who we're about to come to in a second, gets taken off for Konstantinos Mavropanos. And then you're looking at the players on the pitch after that change has been made. They're trying to press in the same way, but they're midfielders short. And it's like, even the players here don't seem to really have any idea what the reason behind this change is or how to adapt to this change and still be effective on the pitch. And we see the players actually arrive in sort of a situational 3-4-1-2 where Somerville crosses across Bowen as the striker, drops deeper to cover the six, and you end up with sort of Bowen and Kudus in advance, which actually is the only system that you could set up in that way to maintain pressure on Spurs with the back three that you've ended up with a midfielder short because you're 2v3 in the centre of the pitch. That's not instructional. That's just come from players themselves working out how to deal with the situation they find themselves in. I just think there were a lot of very, very strange things about those substitutions. We will move on now. We're going to have our break and then we're going to come to talk about some of the players that, despite a 4-1 loss at Spurs, had decent games. Okay, well, we mentioned Guido Rodriguez just there as someone we were going to speak about. And Guido Rodriguez, I thought he had a great game. I thought he played... I mean, it seems bonkers to be saying this. We lost 4-1 Spurs. We should just be ragging on the whole team, shouldn't we? But no, I think Rodriguez and a couple of others who will come to did do a really, really good job on and off the ball. Off the ball, particularly in the sort of first half where he was forced to kind of cover space. You got Souček and Paquetá who are a lot more man-to-man. Paquetá ends up being almost more zonal because Kudus is taking up the wrong positions. He's kind of half and half between Porro and Kulusevski. So Paquetá starts to feel that the place he can have the most impact is by dropping in to allow Emerson to get wider and therefore closer to Porro, even though Emerson can't really do that because he's pinned in by Johnson. And Souček is very, very, very much man-to-man on Maddison. He just follows Maddison wherever he's going. And Antonio is similar, really, on Bissouma, which gives Rodriguez kind of this job of basically being able to sniff out what he thinks is most dangerous and arrive in time to cover it. So he does a lot of covering in behind the full-backs, covering in behind when centre-backs have to step out. I thought the relationship shown between him and Todibo, the moments where Wan-Bissaka is beat and Todibo had to come out to cover that, Rodriguez always anticipated that a couple of seconds ahead so that he was there in time to cover the space. I thought his performance out of possession in the first half was brilliant, and then in possession in the second half, I thought it was fantastic. I played some wonderful balls forward, showed great composure in the middle of the pitch, set the tempo, controlled things for us. And whilst players in advance of him made mistakes, lost the ball, created turnover situations that we weren't then able to defend due to our rest defence structure, the job that he's there to fulfil, he did, and did so pretty outstandingly.
Yeah, 100%. I'm glad you picked up on the distribution in the second half because I think that was it could have easily gone under the radar because of what transpired in the second half and the fact that we conceded as many goals as we did and frankly looked poor. But amongst all of that, as you say, in terms of the function and the role that you want that holding midfielder to do, I think he did a great job. 6 out of 8 long balls completed. I think before Lopetegui even arrived, once we knew he was going to be joining, we said the two things you need your 6 to be able to do are to play switches when they're on, which I think he did, as we've just said, but then also to cover space behind the fullbacks who are going to bomb forward every single time. And in the first half, I think he did that incredibly well. And something that, was a reason that we suggested maybe that you start Alvarez ahead of Guido because of how much space we anticipated him needing to cover in this game. We were concerned that maybe he wouldn't be able to. I think over the full 90, you're asking a lot. But I think in that first 45 minutes, he did a sterling job. 80% tackle success. Can't complain with that. And I think, his awareness and in terms of the space opening up, as you say, and being able to communicate with Todibo, who needs to cover wide and drop in, or does Guido need to cover wide and drop in, etc. I think was really impressive. So yeah, I think ultimately, in amongst all of the shit, he was maybe the diamond in the rough, so to speak, because if he put that performance in as the number 6 in a system that was actually functioning, he would look brilliant and perfect for the role.
Yeah, it makes it even stranger that you got sub for Mavropanos, eh?
Yeah.
So two other players we want to talk about. Maximilian Kilman, we've lost another game. We've conceded another load of goals, and we're going to talk about a centre-back. That might seem bonkers to many of the listeners, but look, he just continues to perform so incredibly well that it would be silly of us not to talk about how well he is doing. He rarely puts a foot wrong defensively. He deals with a lot of situations that could have been so much worse had he not been there to intercept, to head out the box, to block on the last line. And then in possession.
Hell
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That moment where he came across the right centre-back and just like pinged it on the volley through ball to Antonio. Who is this guy? He is outrageously good. Outrageously good. In the second half as well, there's a moment where the ball comes back to him and it's a little jink to the left, beats one player, carries past another player, and then knocks it out wide. When we were stepping high to press in that second half, and the counter press then became important because we're so advanced up the pitch, was he able to go forward, make a burst, get to something, make a tackle, keep us on the attack? Yes, he was. That side of the pitch was very well defended, and a lot of that was down to the performance of Maximilian Kilman, who was just sensational again.
Yeah, was really impressed. I think he only misplaced one pass in the whole game, won 100% of his 6 ground duels. So what would you want from a centre-back, really? And his ball carrying as well. I think he only did one progressive carry from what I saw, but even still, to just know that he can do that. And not be, what's the word? Bewildered maybe isn't the right word, but obviously it would be easy for a centre-back in this situation where you are getting drubbed to lose all confidence and not try these things. And sort of go into their shell and reduce themselves, damage limitation, whatever you want to call it. But even in these trying circumstances, he was still trying to be the progressive force at the back and sort of trying to make things happen and doing it really well in the fleeting moments that we had that were positive in the second half. So yeah, still looks like a really good signing in spite of the result. Really pleased that he's a West Ham player, really pleased that he's tied down to a long-term contract, because I think he is only going to improve. And yeah, it's just, again, a shame that the results aren't matching the performances that he's putting in, because I feel for him, because he must be coming out of each game going, fuck me, I didn't really do much wrong today, did I? Like, come on. But yeah.
Can you imagine he's coming into the dressing room after we've got tonked again, he's going, had a blinder there again, lads, haven't I?
Everyone's like, hang on a sec. What the hell? I also forgot to mention as well with the Guido one. I believe it was him, but one thing we said was that he's comfortable in possession, but not necessarily the most progressive. Doesn't really have an eye for those progressive passes. I mean, the first touch lifted ball over the top to start the move for the goal, right? Like to just spot that run straight away into Antonio over the top of the defense. That's what we needed to see more of. We said they were going to be vulnerable in behind that line if you can play the ball, and he spots it and plays it, and lo and behold, a goal comes. So yeah, definitely glimpses, some strong performances from individuals, and it's no coincidence that those strong performances, those moments were our best moments. It's like that Guido playing that ball led to the goal. Kilman putting balls in behind on the volley. It was one of the best moments of the game for us. So yeah, I just hope it all starts to slowly come together. But now, unfortunately, we have the difficult job of, what did you say? Ragging on them all. So without further ado, unless there's anyone else you want to highlight as a positive, it's time to start the ragging, I think.
Well, look, very quickly, I'll say the fact that we're talking about a 6 and a centre-back both having played very well in a 4-1 defeat should frame the conversation that we're going to have at the back end of this podcast. and 2, Jared Bowen deserves some credit as well. Kilman and Bowen have been the 2 best players this season in terms of their consistency of output. And Bowen just impresses me every week with the way that he's taken to the task that he's being asked to do. we'll talk about this more later. I don't think it suits him at all. I think he's being asked to do things that just don't really make him look as good as he actually is. But as much as he might spend loads of games as a right back these days, he does a bloody good job of being a right back when he needs to be. And he carried well. He supplied brilliantly in the moments where he needed to be creative. I thought he was killed stone dead by being moved up front. And it was difficult for him after that. But up until that point, and even when he was up front, he had one nice moment where he managed to sort of ease a Spurs player off him, chest it down, and then carry us forward. I thought he was impressive alongside Rodriguez and Kilman. The players that struggled, we've spoken about Alphonse Areola and the fact that he should have saved. I think on 3 of the goals he can do so much better. I think his positioning on the fourth is miles out of whack. I think on the first he should be tipping that round the post, stronger wrist. And then on the Todibo onto him own goal, I can't remember if it's the third. I just think, save it, mate. Why are you pushing it away with your feet? You know, if it doesn't bounce off one of our players and go in, it'll bounce off one of their players and go in, or fall to someone's feet in the box. The ball's coming straight at you. It's not undealable with pace, which is a horrendous way of phrasing that, but you know what I mean. I just think, save it. Don't kick it away. Don't understand why he did that. I think that contributed, obviously, to the concession of the goal. Almost bigger than these moments where he wasn't able to pull off saves that we needed him to make. It's what he did with the ball, which was genuinely horrendous. It's one of the worst in possession performances I've seen from a goalkeeper at West Ham. There were so many situations where he had clean passes under no pressure onto either Kilman or Rodriguez, and he instead opted to tonk it to absolutely nobody. We spent the first half under the cosh, and a large part of why we were so under the cosh is because every time the ball went back to Areola, he lost possession. I think there are 4 occasions in the game where he loses possession inside our own defensive third to a Spurs player, which is just inexcusable. 1 in a game is bad. 4 in a game is just not okay at all. And I think Paquetá will get a lot of stick for the way he gives up possession for the... God, I'm struggling to remember which goal is which at this point. But is it the 4th goal? It is the 4th goal where he loses the ball in the centre of the pitch. But what on earth is he meant to do with the ball that Areola sends at him? Areola's got short passes on. And instead of either going short or knocking it all the way long, he clips it into midfield to Lucas Paquetá. The ball arrives kind of at neck, top of his chest height. He's being pressed by a player straight to his back. He's got 2 or 3 other Spurs players immediately converging on him. What can he do with a ball like that? I think, yes, maybe you want him to bring that down. If he brings it down, I'm afraid he's just going to have to boot it out of play himself because of the position he's been put in. Just a really strange performance all around, really, from Areola. And we spoke about it in the preview. We spoke about it on PMP. Darcy and I spoke about it on PMP, that this game, Spurs pressed so high that the ball was going to go back into Areola, and Areola would have to deal with that pressure. What a total failure of being able to cope with being put under a little bit of pressure, eh?
Yeah, it pains me to say it, but it was by far the worst Areola performance we've seen in a West Ham shirt. I don't think that's unreasonable to say. I think, as you've rightly flagged, because it's a combination of being so poor in distribution, but also in terms of shot stopping. Like, you can almost forgive the distribution if his shot stopping is 10-10, which a lot of the time it is. That is kind of why he's become our number one, is because he's never been great with the distribution, but we can forgive it because he makes great saves from point blank range, or his reflex saves are amazing, cat-like reflexes, blah, 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 all these things we've said about Areola. But that game, I think I was digging into some of the numbers. In terms of his distribution, 28 attempted long passes, 43% success. So that's 16 long passes that didn't find their man out of 28, which is just not good enough at all. But then you look at the shot stopping numbers, and you kind of have to caveat this as well, because it doesn't actually factor in the own goal, because that won't come up in the XG against, because he technically saved that moment with the shot. He saved it from Son with his foot, and then it doesn't get fed into the numbers. So in terms of the expected goals on target that he faced 0.74. So he was expected to concede, taking into the quality of the finishing from the opposition, he was expected to concede less than 1 goal, and he concedes 4. 3 of which are accounted for in those numbers, and then 1 of them is an own goal on top, which really is potentially one of the worst parts of the goalkeeping performance anyway, because as you say, why is he going for it with his legs? It's moving at P-roll pace. Like, he could have just stopped and got his hand down to it, picked it up and gone, really. But yeah, just poor all round, and disappointing for someone who, generally speaking, as we say, has been so reliable and has kept us in games throughout his career since he's been number 1, because he kind of enabled the whole Moyes backs to the wall stuff so many times, because you concede so many shots, and he's the reliable shot stopper that allows you to concede so many shots, because he's going to stop so many shots. But it definitely doesn't work when he's in that sort of form, does it? So yeah, incredibly disappointing. And I think, as we said much earlier in the pod, like, there were waves of possession that I really enjoyed from us. We'd sort of go down one flank, pass it back to the centre-backs, they'd knock it out to the other flank. But on the occasions that it went to the centre-backs and then back to the goalkeeper, if we
and our players are doing everything right in those moments, by the way.
And all he needed to do was play it back to the centre-back, and it's like, sweet, we're knocking it about, we're biding our time. But instead it gets to him, and he's like, nope, boom, goes out for a throw-in. All of that lovely build-up and possession that we've just done, we've made a lot about controlling games with the ball recently. You don't have to defend if you're controlling the game with the ball. It's impossible to have any control of the game with the ball if you're kicking it out for throw-ins, and then all of your players have got to sprint back to get back into position because you've just given the opposition a throw-in on halfway, when all of your players are in the opposition half because they're in a comfortable spell of possession. So, yeah,
or a throw-in 5 yards out from your goal, because you did that as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we've probably covered the Areola performance there, but yeah, needless to say, if you're going to get yourself into a Premier League team because your shot stopping is so incredibly good, you need to make sure your shot stopping is so incredibly good, because if it's not, you very quickly become not capable of playing at this level. Because if you're offering nothing in terms of your build-up and possession, and you can't be an above-average shot stopper, then...
And he's not good claiming crosses either. He doesn't dominate his penalty area at all.
Not at all. One of the worst in the league statistically. So the 3 things you need to be good at, really, if you're not good at any of them. And this is what we should say, is, as I've been trying to say, is that Areola is a good shot stopper based on the evidence base that we've got. This is one game. We shouldn't slam him and say he's a shit goalkeeper, because he's not. But what I'm saying is, if this is the level of performance that comes from now on, then no. Then no, it can't run. Yeah, exactly. It can't run.
Yeah, look, we did so much on Areola. I feel bad if we get on this long about the other 2. Paquetá, again, struggled. Like I've said, I think he's put in a bad position by Areola for one of the turnovers. I think he's also put in a pretty bad position by Emerson for the other turnover that leads to a counter-attack. Still, can he do better? Yes, he can. And I think... I mean, partly I feel for him as well, because why is he playing left centre back for 45 minutes of the game and he only lasts 10 of the second half anyway? So how difficult is it to judge a Paquetá performance when he's being asked to do a job that just doesn't suit him at all? Mohammed Kudus scores the goal. Some good moments going forward. Carried so well at points in this game. Defensively disastrous. Just totally switched off for so much of the match. Let Porro go time after time. Ended up on the right in the second half, and then this moment where he just like, Son's running in behind. He's just like, yeah, go on, see you later, mate. Watching it happen, he's not even facing the wrong way. He's facing back towards their own goal. It makes no effort to cover. Really strange. Completely the opposite of Jarrod Bowen, who's just like, will give absolutely everything, even if he's forced to be a right back. He'll go and do it, and do his best to go 1v1 against Son. Kudus just didn't seem to want to do that job at the weekend, which isn't great to see, and in combination with the head loss for the red card, isn't a good look. I would suggest it's not a good look to come away from a game not really putting the proper shift in defensively, and then also getting sent off in pretty silly fashion after the collapse. The only counterbalancing thing I would add to that is he has had a really shit couple of weeks away on international duty, and I do wonder if his head is slightly all over the place at the moment. It's not been going well at club level. It has really not been going well at international level, where he is the main man.
Yeah, he's like a pop star in Ghana, isn't he? He's like the guy.
So I think perhaps a little bit, of patience and empathy afforded in this situation, where a player is having a bit of a rough time in terms of the form of the two teams that he's so important to.
Yeah. Okay.
And from that, I think we should just move on, to be honest, and go to the final section of this podcast, which we've left ourselves woefully short on time to cover. So we are going to
maybe that's a good thing.
No, I don't think it is, because I think we need to do this. I think we have to do this. You said it at the top: objectivity, honesty. It needs to happen. I think we have to ask the question at this stage of the season: fundamentally, does Lopetegui ball work for us? I think we have to factor profiles within our squad, the overall quality of the system. Is it, from an in-possession perspective, from an out-of-possession perspective, does it enable us to generate high-quality chances? Does it enable us to stop the opposition from generating high-quality chances? And ultimately, are we able to control games? Because that's fundamentally, that's what Lopetegui has been brought into this football club to do. He's been brought into it to give us a platform by which we can control games. And I think this is the first point in the season where we have to really take a sort of stark look at things and say, is that working? And from my side of things, I think it's impossible to look at West Ham at the moment and arrive at any of those questions with positive answers. I think the answers to all of those questions are questionable at best, and flat no's at worst, really.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of the best way to sum it up. I think we've seen glimpses of each part of the system. My concern is that in order to see one part of the system work, you've had to sacrifice essentially the other parts. We've not seen any of it come together all in one, really, I would say. Like, there's been chunks of games where we've looked solid out of possession, not going to be troubled, but we've offered nothing in attack. We've not created any high quality chances, and we've not controlled possession. We've had moments where we've created high quality chances, but because of a combination of the system and individual performance, or players being asked to do things that they're not really perfectly capable of doing, we've looked incredibly vulnerable in transition and therefore conceding super high quality chances, which for me, when we were appointing a manager coming off the back of the reasons why we sacked Moyes, it's because a manager who made his bread and butter on limiting teams to low quality, low volume chances wasn't working, and we were conceding far too many. The big thing needed to be that changed, and I don't think we've seen that change, which is a huge issue for me, unfortunately. And when we have, looked as though we wanted to control moments of possession, those moments of control haven't really come together with the creation of high quality chances. It's kind of been possession for possession, but without actually having the impact in the final third. So we've kind of got three pieces of a functioning system, but none of which have functioned together. And I think that's really not what you want to be seeing at this point, because you need to see week on week progress. And I think what we've seen is a week on week showcase of a part of the system, but not really any progress because they've all been separate and distinct. And I think one of the key issues is that we haven't really acted on. There's been such glaring issues. What's the saying? It's like, if you try and do something over and over and over again and expect different results, you're crazy or you're a madman or whatever. And
Definition of insanity.
well, there you go. And without wanting to be too scathing, it frustrates me as an analyst and someone who likes to think I know a little bit about football that we can spot these glaring issues that are systemic. My main one being that we're so dogmatically committed to playing both wing backs so advanced and not having the rest defence to cover it. We're seeing chances given up every week, the same chance. The centre back scrambling back because there's so much space for the opposition to attack. And yeah, we've not seen really any deviation from it. We've not gone, okay, in this game we're going to just tell Wan-Bissaka to sit back and have a solid three at the back to defend against those transitions. That to me is potentially the biggest concern, is because there's not been any proactivity game on game to address these weaknesses. It's more of a, right, this week it's going to click. And if it was clicking, fine, I'd be like, yeah, I respect that. But we're seeing it week on week, the same issue, which is a real concern for me.
You referenced earlier that the manager is sort of framing what's going on as a question of consistency, and I would probably put it that it's more a question of cohesion. More than anything. I think your point about elements of a system rather than a whole system is absolutely correct. Quality of chance comes at the cost of quality of defence and ability to defend transitions. Control comes at the cost of quality of chance. It's not a good place to be in, where you're always having to sacrifice something fundamental to the success of the system to be able to activate one part of it. And ultimately for me, that comes down to profiles. And an important question that really should be at the top of any process, which is, do you derive a system from the group of players that you have and working out how to extract the best from that group of players to effectively achieve results and win points? Or do you impose a system on a group of players because you believe the system gives you the best opportunity of securing results? I think what we're seeing is the latter, which is a perfectly fine way to approach building a team. But in order to do that, you have to have good profiles to fulfill the jobs within the system. At the moment, I question massively whether we have good profiles to fulfill the jobs required of players within the system. And I think that's when it becomes more collective and more about the manager than about the individual. We have spoken about Paquetá this season. Is he too direct? Does he need to be moved to the bench? I tweeted in the Spurs game, it's time to introduce Paquetá to the bench. This is one of our best players last season, one of our most important players, a player that was close to moving to Manchester City for 85 million quid. Kudus, we spoke about in recent weeks. Is he too direct? Is he a little bit too one-dimensional to fulfill the job or to carry out the job that Lopetegui is asking him to do? Does he need to be benched in favour of Crescencio Somerville? This is another of our best players, someone that was fundamental to everything that we achieved last season and was at a really high level for us. Jarrod Bowen, gone from a 15-goal a season plus guy, 20-goal a season guy, down to someone that looks like he might get 7. Might add a few assists to that. Not that he's getting credited with any of them, which is bollocks, might I add. But his biggest thing, he's the biggest difference maker in our entire squad because he can score goals if you give him chances, and we're not giving him any chances. So again, a question over profiles there. Wan-Bissaka brought in to be Jesus Navas of old of Sevilla. That's not Wan-Bissaka. He can't do any of that stuff. Emerson. Seen us try and play 3 at the back previously under David Moyes and talk about how we lacked wing backs on the West Ham breakdown. Talk about how Sofal and Emerson are not right for those roles. Talk about how Emerson's biggest issue in his entire game is recovering when he's asked to overlap the winger. And we've created a role for him which is almost entirely about recovering after he's overlapped the winger. I think we have to start to move. Areola, another one. We're talking about Areola this week. We just did a 10-minute section on Areola and how his distribution is a problem. How and if this continues, it can't run at the top level. This is another guy that was a Hammer of the Year nominee last season. I think we've done 4 of the 5 Hammer of the Year nominees last season, just in a conversation about players that should be introduced to the bench. Now, that can't be good management. That cannot be good management. To come into a group that, yes, needed change, that, yes, had gone a little bit stagnant. Sure. But had good players. And players that were performing at a good level as individuals. And for all of those players to be looking not too good is not great in terms of the input that they're getting. And yeah, like I say, imposition of system is fine. Only works if you've got the players that can do it. And at the moment, I'm seeing a very Ten Hag-esque imposition of system, actually at the cost of the players in the team, rather than to the benefit of the players in the team. And yeah, there's no other way I can frame this than to say I am very worried about that.
Yeah, I think you've summed it up well. I mean, end of last season, what we were saying, we were really excited about what might come, grateful for the era that we had under Moyes, but that he'd built such a strong foundation for us to catapult off of, to go to even greater heights with a front three of Paquetá, Kudus and Bowen that we were saying was capable of a Champions League level quality. And it's not just us, I might add. Sky Sports, all of the media were saying that that's a Champions League level front three based on the quality of performance that they were putting in. Bowen getting into the England teams, Kudus tearing the Premier League up in his first season, really, first 6 months, like whatever. He was being just unbelievable, getting already linked with moves to Liverpool. Paquetá, as you say, linked with moves to City. Even Bowen linked with moves to Liverpool. Like, to go from that and to not capitalise on the foundation that's been built for you, and to spend the amount of money to bring in the supporting cast and get the players that you said you needed to kick on, bringing in Kilman, bringing in Todibo. It's not great. It's not looking good.
Yeah, from that to bust-ups, violent conducts and red cards. Potential.
That's the West Ham way, man. We're
potentially
back.
Bench for the other one, and the other one's at right back is not exactly where we want to be, is it? It is not where we want to be. Yeah. It's going to be funny, isn't it, this next game? We're going to talk about it, obviously, over on Patreon. And I'm really looking forward to the preview stuff this week, because I think it's like the blind meets the blind. And I'm looking forward to seeing what that ends up looking like as a football match. Ultimately, I think we have to win.
Yeah.
I think we have to win next weekend. Otherwise, I think the questions just become overwhelming. Time is important for any manager. Time is important for anyone attempting to change anything. But time is only earned when you can see a pathway to future development. And that pathway to future development can only be based on evidence from what you see in front of you in the present moment. The evidence is not good. West Ham are not a good football team at the moment.
No.
Lopetegui is an experienced coach, and I hope he turns it around. Cal hopes he turns it around. Do we believe that he can? Absolutely. Do we believe that he has a group of players that he can make look very good? Absolutely. If we said we believe that would happen based on what we've seen so far this season, we would be lying. But who knows? We've got Man United yet. Up next.
How do we wrap this up? Let's get out of here, man.
I'm not sure they know what they're doing. So, like I say, let's look forward to that and hope that that is the starting point for the change that this football club desperately needs at the present moment.
Well, it needs to be a catalyst, doesn't it? And I think in one way, it has to be a catalyst. It's a derby match that we got tonked in. We need to come out of the blocks and see some progress. And I think Kudus being red carded kind of forces one change anyway, right? Like we've said, we need to see one of the key personnel dropped. Okay, the hand's been forced, but it does mean we're going to see something slightly different, a change that needs to be made. We don't know what it's going to be, but it could be the spark. It could give someone an opportunity to come on and go, right, these lot have been shit. I'm going to take this opportunity and I'm going to be the change that drives us towards the success that we wanted to see, that we believe Lopetegui is capable of delivering. Fingers crossed. Fuck me, it needs to happen soon, doesn't it?
For the love of all things holy, +1 in the rest defense. Please do it. Please, God, I can't see us concede another goal in transition like those that we've conceded so far. Right. Thank you for listening to the West Ham Breakdown. Thank you for suffering with us for the last, almost hour, I think, this week.
It was always going to be a long one.
It had to be a bumper episode. It's a 4-1 Barring in the derby. There's no other way that we can do this without being as forensic as we usually are, to arrive at conclusions that appear all the more earth-shattering every week. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Cal, and please do join us over on Patreon. We've got loads of good stuff going on over there this week. Euro review, of course, and then also the preview work for Man United. We're enjoying the process thoroughly. Actually, Spurs was a great process to go through. I think we discussed a lot of the things that then happened in the game. You know, Darcy raised the idea of defending 4-1-4-1 and defending south side with the wingers. We saw a lot of the problems that generated in the first half. So I think we're doing a good job at identifying key matchups and things that will or can happen in games. And we're learning as well each week, because we've had to sort of download a lot of information about how Lopetegui plays and how this team is functioning to be able to understand how different teams, how different managers will then react to that, and how those clashes work. So we'll enjoy doing that again this week, even though it's going to be nigh on impossible, because who knows with Man United and who knows with West Ham at the moment. But yeah, it'd be great to see some of you over there. The first week is free, and we're incredibly grateful for all the support we've had so far. It's been pretty mind-blowing, really, the amount of people that have jumped over. I've really enjoyed being on the Discord. We have some fantastic conversations every single week about things that are happening at West Ham, so it'd be lovely to have some of you over there. Yeah, thank you, and hopefully we'll catch you in a much better mood next week. See you later.
Thanks, guys.